Hello, Nick family. Welcome to the Queen's Court. I'm your host, Stephanie, aka Queen, and as always, we have a lot to talk about. The Knicks 2-1 since we last met on the Queen's Court, 3-2 overall. I think we got a little more handle on this team, offensively, defensively. We'll talk about it. Towns has looked good. We'll talk about him as well. OG, some days, at least offensively, he's much more assertive. Other games, he's not. The defense has been pretty consistent. I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Knicks. I think they're going to have a different style offensively, at least, than last year's team. But I'm here for it. I'm going to bring in Tony Crow from Knicks and Bruises, Lady and the Chef, two Knicks chicks, Jeff Clapp, Jeff changing up. Look at him now. Jeff Clapter from the Happily Ever Clafter Daily Sports Blog and panelists on the Just Nicking It Weekly Show. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Peace, Queen.
All right. Shout
Salute
out to
everybody.
shout out to the chat. I just want to do a quick overview of last week, just for some context and just to remind ourselves of what happened. So the Knicks were 2-1 last week. We lost to Cleveland at home, I believe that game was. And then we beat Miami 116-107, beat Detroit 128-98 versus Cleveland. Brunson led us with 21 points. Josh Hart with 15 rebounds. Brunson with 7 assists. As far as shooting, not great. 44.4% overall, just 32.1% from the field, and 83.3% from the free throw line. We're rounding into being a really good free throw shooting team as far as efficiency is concerned. We do need to get our attempts up some. Miami, really good game in my opinion. Listen, this is the Karl-Anthony Towns like coming out party. We're going to talk about that. 44 points. Josh Hart led us with 14. He also had 13 rebounds in that game. Josh Hart with 14. Brunson with 9 assists. The Knicks shot very well in that game. 48.8% from the field, 45% from the three-point line, and 90% from the free throw line. And then Detroit. And even though the Knicks blew Detroit out, I'm interested to see what the panel thinks. Coming into the game, they were a team that had played their opponents up to that point really tough. Jalen Brunson led us with 36 points. Karl-Anthony Towns with 11 rebounds and 7 assists. And the Knicks shot 51.5% from the field, 47% from the three-point line. I may have gotten that wrong. 60% from the free throw line. Let me.
I think that's right.
It's
You think
right.
that's right? That is right. Oh, okay. All
We
right.
only had like 10 attempts.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All
Yep.
right. Good enough. Good enough. Let's bring the panel in. I'm trying to figure out, do I just want to go overall? Because sometimes it's hard when you want to go game by game to kind of remember, particularly the Cleveland game, which was a week,
Mhm.
which was a week ago. So we'll just sit. We'll go overall. Actually,
I remember them individually
you remember them individually?
for the most part.
All right. Eh, The question I have for you guys as far as Cleveland is concerned, and then I want to get into Towns, and we're going to talk about Towns and the offense kind of together. I noticed Cleveland defensively, who's undefeated, by the way, 6-0 or 7-0. They switched everything.
Mhm.
They switched everything. Even if that meant Jared Allen on Jalen Brunson. Um, yeah, that's what they did. I thought, and it worked for them. But I thought it worked for them because I didn't think the Knicks were super. They weren't there. They usually they recognize those sorts of things much better. And Brunson, to me, taking a 3-pointer over the outstretched hands of a Jared Allen. I just felt, not that he did it all the time, I just thought that we could have got some better shots on those switches. But what do you remember about our offense is their defense? And shout out to the chat, by the way. Tony, Lady and the Chef, Jeff, and then Jeff. We'll mix it up.
I think it was a combination of both, especially in the second half. We stopped going to Macau, I believe, who was having a pretty good game. Brunson had a bad game overall, definitely from Brunson's standpoint. And I want to say Cat had a very limited amount of shot attempts. I want to say 8.
You're
Which
right.
we that can't happen. So it was like a combination of, and we'll talk about his follow-up game, but I think that was like a wake-up call, because that was the big talk about, all right, we need more attempts. Whatever you're shooting is what you're shooting, but we need more than 8 attempts from Karl-Anthony Towns, especially on a night where Brunson wasn't Brunson. You know what I mean? But we were in that game in the first half for sure. I think we blew a lead in the second half, and we kind of just never found our bearings. I don't think that's going to be a typical experience for this team, long term or moving forward. Once every 10 games or whatever the case, you might see a performance like that. But I think it was a wake up call for Karl-Anthony Towns in particular.
Yeah, and Lady and the Chef, you can answer this also. Do you think it was also a wake up call for the team? Also, in terms of, you know, I don't know if we're at our best just getting him 8 shots a game. What was your thoughts on the Cleveland game overall and Towns with the 8 shots?
Yeah, Karl-Anthony Towns can't just settle for 8 shots. I mean, that's not a healthy Knicks basketball. That's not Knicks playing Knicks basketball. And I believe he got in foul trouble too, and he fouled out of the game. So,
Yes.
things like that can't happen when you're such a pivotal player on a team and the team needs you. And I think that was a wake up call for him as well. But I really want to harp on what you said initially with Jalen Brunson, and Tony spoke on this as well. Brunson not having a good game. I spoke on this on Two Knicks Chicks when we were live just yesterday, about how I felt like Brunson, because I seen it happen when we played our last game against Detroit, even though we were blowing them out. There was one possession where I saw Brunson, and I've seen Brunson do this maybe if a handful of times last season, where sometimes he's going to work and he'll take a shot, a 3-point shot that, to me, it's like, we know you can make it, but I'm like, I don't think you should have shot that. I think you should have passed it. And whoever it was on Detroit just blocked his shot, like a one-handed clean block. They didn't even have to really jump. The defender just put his hand out. He was able to block the shot. And I remember Cat was like to Brunson's right, and then he had another option to go maybe to the corner, the shortest point 3-pointer. And I said, well, why wouldn't Brunson just make that pass? Like, sometimes I think it goes back to when we had this conversation of how I was saying he needs to have that balance of, someone said in the comments, oh, well, I think Brunson, for him to be considered for, the MVP talks, because the commentators have brought that up in the Detroit game. And, I was thinking to myself, well, what would make Brunson be considered in that conversation? And someone in the chat said, oh, well, I think he needs to be averaging at least 10 assists a game. And, that sparked a whole nother conversation. But I think that it goes back to what I was saying before. And I think that Brunson needs to learn how to find that balance of being able to, like, facilitate and set guys up, which will also help us win games. Because we know you can score. We know you can get to the paint like he wants to. But I just think sometimes Brunson plays a little too hero ball. And I think that you can have the best of two. And in some games, you have to pick your battle where you can still go off. But if you set your guys up and also utilize that 2-man game, which I would love to see between evolve between him and Cat over time, being that he has a guy who can catch it and shoot it and score it. But I don't know. I just thought in that Cleveland game, there was a little bit of like he was off and he was trying to force things that wasn't there. And that's where I would have liked to seen that other half of balance of, well, let me facilitate and pass guys the ball and get them the shots and, make things happen in that regard. So I don't know. I think that's something that I want to see from Brunson a little bit more in games like that.
Okay. Jeff, your thoughts on the Cleveland game, Town shots, and whatever stood out for you in that game?
I think with Towns, the Miami game was kind of him just taking ownership of like, yeah, I'm a part of this team. I'm not going to defer. I'm going to do what I know how to do and get up shots and just score. Like, I think he's the new kid on the block. So he's just, and Bridges was kind of like that a little bit too, just kind of feeling things out and just kind of getting their feet wet, so to speak. And that was really the first game where I felt like, yeah, he's just fully engaged and comfortable and ready to go, like locked in with his game and comfortable with what he's able to do with his teammates around him. And so I think what was telling, I guess, for me in the Cleveland game is Cleveland's been playing ridiculously well, is that our shooting percentages were bad and we lost by 6 points.
Right.
Like, to me, I take that as an encouragement because I think that this team, especially offensively, is going to get a lot better. And the reason that I think that is if you look at Jalen Brunson is getting more looks from 0 to 3 feet than he has in his entire Knicks career. And he's only shooting like 58% in there, something like that for 0 to 3. And they're wide open shots. So that's something that I think that's going to progress to the mean of his career. And as those numbers go up, his scoring average is going to climb. I mean, in the Miami game and in the Cleveland game, both games he shot 33%, if I'm not mistaken. And so he had multiple games where he didn't really have it going on the offensive end. And then against Detroit, he was, back to the Brunson that we know and love. So I'm not overly concerned. I don't think there's anything specifically wrong. I just think that sometimes throughout the course of a season, you're going to have 1 or 2 games where you don't shoot the ball well. What I think is really comforting for this team is that we have a lot of answers when one of our guys isn't really having their on night. I would even argue our top 6 guys are all guys who you can expect to score 20 points on any given night. And that's a really good luxury to have. And I don't think it's one that we necessarily could have said about past teams. So although we have when we had Quick and Barrett and them, that group did that a bunch too. So maybe we have had it, but not quite like this, not with the efficiency that these guys can score with. It's a little bit different. Like in the past, we were overly reliant on, cleaning up the offensive glass, getting more shots and just from a sheer volume perspective, getting points. 20 points on 20 shots is not ideal. But with this team, you can have 20 points on 8 shots. Like there's a lot of guys in this lineup that can do a lot of damage. And I'm really encouraged by Mikal Bridges from the corners. I think he's really doing an outstanding job knocking down the corner 3. I really, he had that bad first half against Boston, but ever since then, I feel like he's been pretty solidly locked in and really impressive, especially in the mid-range game. He's not the outside shooter that Dante was, just from a sheer volume anywhere on the court, but he is about, I think, 57% from the corners right now. And he adds all that mid-range stuff and going to the basket stuff that Dante, that's just not really his game, in my opinion. So,
right. So in terms of, you mentioned Brunson struggling, and this is for the panel, the games in which he struggled, do you think it was the length was bothering him, the defensive schemes was bothering him, or do you think it was a matter of he was getting to his spots and just missing shots?
Yeah, he was just missing to me. It was just off. It was an off night.
Two of them back to back. I think he just missed shots that he normally makes at the rim and three-point shots. You combine that with like Lady and the Chef was saying, a couple of maybe bad decisions, shooting over Allen instead of looking for a easier shot. Um, I think it was a combination, or mostly him just missing shots that he's gonna make throughout the season. You know what I mean? On a 9 out of 10 times. So I chalk it up to that. And you know, like I was saying, it affected us in the first game, and like Jeff said, we only lost by 6. The second game, his shooting was just as poor, if you will, or he wasn't up to standards again. But you see when everybody else is kind of stepping up around him, how dangerous we can still be with Brunson not being at his A game, and we're gonna need that. Everybody's not gonna have their A game night in and night out, but collectively we have enough to where 3 guys can step up if 2 guys are playing. 2 guys in that starting unit is not playing up to their standards.
And
Yeah,
this may not have anything to do with it, but I think Spida and Jalen kind of have a little bit of a, not a beef, but they just like when they're playing against each other, there's just kind of they just want to do that one-upmanship or whatever you want to call it. They really like to go at each other, and Spida kind of had it going early in that game, and I think that maybe Brunson was pressing a little bit because he wanted to match Donovan basket for basket, and he's done that quite a bit over the course of his career, not just with the Knicks, but also in that classic Dallas Utah playoff series from a couple years ago. So I think there's that kind of dynamic between those two.
Tone.
I agree with the dynamic. The only thing I disagree with, I felt like Garland was really carrying them early. Like he was taking the burden, and I think that made things a little bit easier for Mitchell in the second half to kind of go ahead and take control and kind of be a closer in that situation. Um, and that's the thing that we can look forward to. You know what I mean? Where we have guys capable of carrying us in the quarter, carrying us in the half, but Brunson being that closer when need be down the road. But I think it was really, I think Mitchell had that luxury of not having to press early, not having to carry the team early because Garland was having such a good game.
Yeah, I haven't really took a look at the shot distribution in terms of shots per game, but it seems to me that Brunson, Bridges, and Towns pretty much in it could be in any order or any night. It's probably going to be the 3 that take the most shots. I think there'll be games in which OG kind of sneaks in there. What do you think about that? Do you feel like that's probably what you thought coming in? That's probably what's best for the team, or do you feel like maybe OG should get some more shots? What's your thoughts on just the distribution? We'll start with you, Lady and the Chef, then Jeff, then Tony.
Well, no, I think I was expecting it to be exactly just that. Brunson, Bridges, and Cat being
Mhm.
the top leading scorers. And I don't know. I asked Diva that question too about OG as far as should he be scoring more points? Like, but then she did bring up a good point. She's like, the thing is that he's playing both sides of the floor really well. Like he's giving you a lot defensively. Like she said, he's one guy, he's one player. We can't overextend and expect too much from him. And my response to that was, my biggest thing with OG is I just want OG to stay healthy for us as long as possible. Give us at least 65 solid games, 60, 65 games. And then if you need to rest for whatever period, just be available for this next team in the postseason. But right now, I feel like OG is staying balanced in that he's given the Knicks. I think at least you need to give us at least 15 points a night minimum, at least from him. And then keep doing what he's doing defensively for this team. And then I think the other guy who could kind of step into that place if it's not OG who's going to give you that 20 plus a night, it's definitely could be Deuce who can give you that. So I think the balance is there with OG. He's doing a lot defensively, and a lot of the what he does defensively, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. It's the little things that he does that just he's so valuable. And I saw an article that Tip said, he's just what he does defensively for this team speaks volumes. It's so loud. And OG is very I heard you talking about this, Queen, how same thing like with Cat. They're very poised. You said I barely see Cat. Looks like he's barely sweat. I barely saw a glisten of sweat coming off of him. And I noticed that some players they just have that, and Jalen has that too, where they're just so locked in. They don't allow players to rattle them, even if they may get a turnover or whatever. They're just locked into what they're gonna do next to make up for whatever happened on the other end of the floor. And I love that about OG. He's not a very emotional guy. You're not going to see him get too high or yelling or flexing his arm, like some other guys, and M1 yelling, all of that. And I was even saying, I said, I noticed when OG he goes for a layup or a dunk, he doesn't land on his feet. If you notice, he lands on his butt. And I think he does that purposely so he's not going to hurt anything. Every time he goes down, I go, oh boy, I'm like, is he okay? But he slides. He lands on his butt and his body slides. And I think he does that so he doesn't have to land all the time on his 2 feet. So if you guys pay attention to that, when he goes in for a dunk or a layup, somehow I don't know, he likes to land. I guess it's more a safer zone for him to land that way than to potentially land on both feet most times.
Yeah, I would definitely peek that. Jeff, your thoughts on the shot distribution so far?
I'm not really surprised, and I think it's the correct order of operations for this team. I think I'm not saying that OG's incapable of having a big offense. We've seen it. Like we saw him against the Pacers at 28 points in 26 minutes or something like that before he pulled his hamstring. So he's certainly going to have nights like that, but I don't know that you can rely on him consistently for that kind of a. I don't think you would want to. I think you just take those games where he's got it going, and then you feed him when that's the case. But I think it's really a weapon to have guys like Hart and OG who you don't have to have as a focal point of the offense, but when they're having a good night, you can just let them go and do their thing, and it'll take some of the burden off of those top 3 scorers. But as far as I'm concerned, Bridges, Brunson, and Cat are the guys I want shooting the ball. So I have no problem with it.
Yeah, for sure. Tone, did you get a chance to answer this one?
You're on mute, boss.
My bad. I look at the pecking order as Brunson and Cat for sure. I kind of put OG and Bridges on equal playing field. I think what it is Mikal has a little bit more versatility as far as putting it on the floor and being able to create. So it may look like he's getting that same. He's in that same realm with Cat and Brunson. What I will say about Bridges though, throughout the 5 games, he's been the most consistent. You know what I mean? So and that also makes it look, you know what I mean, a certain way. But I think OG Mikal, they're gonna kind of get around the same amount of shots. 15, maybe 16. I think last game OG had 16, Mikal had 14. You know what I mean? So I think it's gonna be relatively close between those two, and then relatively close in the higher number with Brunson and Cat. Now that being said, Cat had 2 games where he shot under 10 shots. I also believe he learned from that. And he knows now, or the team knows now, like that can't go down. You know what I mean? These two both have to be closer to 20 shots, Brunson and Cat, for us to be fully successful. Another part of that is because as we see more and more, Cat's versatility as far as creating for others. He's only going to be able to do that with the ball in his hands. So the more it's in his hands, the more it's going to open up more shot attempts for whether it's Brunson, Mikal, OG, or even Hart for that matter. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on those who feel like it doesn't matter as far as shots attempt? I disagree with that. I do think it matters because I just think some players are going to command more attention and open things up for other players. Whereas if you give OG 25 shots, okay, I mean, teams would love that. They would love to see OG get 25 shots. And Cat and Brunson get, I don't know, 10, 15 shots. But what's your thought? Because I hear some in the chat. Knicks 100 or GM and others. It doesn't really matter who gets the shot attempts. We're working on team scoring. Jeff?
Well, I think what we've seen is a couple of things. First of all, the Knicks are set up to have a lot of balance in their scoring. Like I think we've had 4 games where all 5 starters have been in double figures. I think
Right.
that's going to be a common theme throughout the season. But at the same time, you want to play the percentages, right? You want to have your highest percentage shot takers taking the majority of the shots. You want to have your guys who are most successful, and you want the guys to get the shots in the zones where they shoot at the highest percentages. I mean, that's just basic offense. So I think it does matter. I think you do want Jalen Brunson to have a plurality of the shots. I mean, I'm not saying he needs to take all of them, but he needs to have a plurality of the shots. And I think what we saw is even in the first 5 games, we're much better when Towns gets more shots than when he only gets 8 or 10. Not that he scored poorly when he only had those
Right.
few shots,
Right.
but we're so much better, and you get to see a lot more of his playmaking ability when all of a sudden he's getting the ball in his hands a lot and he's scoring. Then defenses have to pay attention to him, and then he's able to have a big assist game because he does have good court vision, in my opinion, and that is a part of his game that we kind of caught a glimpse of early on. I think that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about this team so far on offense. The assist numbers are very high, and
For
and
field
and
goal
so
attempt.
that's good,
Amazing.
clean
Amazing. Yeah.
basketball.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and some players play better with the ball in their hands, and some players play better when someone is setting them up, for shots. And so I think that's why, um, if you want to say pecking order, I don't know if that's what it is, but in terms of, you want to make sure your best guys, you want to make sure players are getting the shots they can make. Right? So you don't want OG in a situation where he has to create for others. You want him in a situation where he's finishing, because he's at his best
Mhm.
um, doing that. I want to talk about our offense, but I want to start off with spotlighting Cat. These past 3 games this week, 26 points, 11.3 rebounds on super efficiency, 56.9% from the field, 61.5% from 3, and 92.3% from the field. This is a guy who could probably average 20 on 4 shots. You know what I mean? Like this is how efficient he's been since he's been here. The question I have for the panel is, do you think that 44-point game was necessary to solidify his spot in the offense? Now, the team already knew before he got here the type of talent he had, right? Um, but do you think after that game, and even before the game, Brunson said, we need to get him some more shots, whatever. But do you think after that game, when he showed his entire repertoire, like when I was doing the game recap, he was deep in his bag. If you for us females who, well, I don't carry a pocketbook, but for those who do carry a pocket, when you have the change all the way down in the bottom of the bag, like this is where he was deep in his bag, where the loose change was in that 44 point game. Do you think after that, the team was kind of like, all right, it's one thing to think it, it's another thing to see it. Do you think that kind of solidified him in the in the offense. Jeff, we'll start with you, then Lady and the Chef, then Tony, and we'll try.
I'm
We're
going to
doing
say yes.
pregame as
I know.
well, so we're gonna try to keep our our answers succinct. Yes, Jeff.
So I'm going to answer yes. And I think part of it is not just that he scored the 44, but who he scored it against. Like
Mm.
he got 44 on Bam, who's one of the best defensive bigs in the game. And so I think that yes, you kind of realize that, but not all 44-point games are created equal. He was efficient. He was an assassin. He scored on all three levels. I mean, he just showed, as you said, everything. So I absolutely think yes.
Yeah. Lady and the Chef.
Yeah, I think it did, but I don't think that that game, even if he didn't have 44, it would have solidified. Like to me, and I've heard you sum this up, Queen, really well. Like I'm just so in awe at how patient he is, how poised he is, how he takes the shots he wants to take. Even when he shoots the threes, I feel good about them.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because I know he can make it, but they're good quality shots. They don't look rushed. He don't look like he's speeding up. And you don't really see too many guys now take the ball in the paint anymore. And the fact that, and he plays that bully ball and he's able to do it. And I guess because he's like the length and he's taller and longer than Randall, it just looks a little bit more like an actual post, a center, 4 or 5 center doing it. But he just does it really well. And I even get impressed with the way he gets the ball in the paint. He may miss a layup, and then he gets the rebound. He'll hesitate at the right time. It's the timing. He'll hesitate, and then he puts the ball back up with strength, and he's able to get the shot that he wants. But I think even if he didn't score that 44, that was coming anyway. Like we were going to see those 35, 40 plus point games from him, and that's going to happen throughout the remainder of this season. We're going to see that. But his skill set, and he shows he belongs on this New York Knicks team, and he can handle a New York Knicks crowd. He's from Jersey, but he, playing in Minnesota, that he's playing with Anthony Edwards. Yeah, his skill set is there. He's gotten better since the last time Tibbs was his coach. Yeah. So whether he got the 44 or not, I think he's definitely proven, listen, I belong here, and I'm approved why I belong here, and this is what I can do and give to this team.
Yeah. Tony?
Yeah, I was gonna say no, and I thought it dated back to the games beforehand. The games where he didn't take a lot of shots, because he's even in those games he shot the ball well, and it was about dude, like you can't take 9 shots, you can't take 8 shots. And I agree with Lady and Chef 100%. I thought based off of that, it was coming regardless. So whether it was 44 that night, I think we're gonna see a plethora of games this year where he's getting 30-point games, 40-point games, maybe a 50-point game in there, right? But what makes it so eye-opening to me is it seems simplistic. Like he doesn't seem to be fighting and struggling and clawing to get these shots. You know what I mean? It's something so simple about it that makes it, so nice to watch, and such a change in scenery of what we're used to. So to me, that confirms it even more that games like this are gonna come. You know what I mean? They're gonna come repeatedly as the season goes on. But coming off the 8-shot performance, you know what I mean? It was great to see him kind of put it right back together, bounce back. You mentioned Bam, yes, great defender. But before the game, he spoke about how he plays well in Miami. So he was up for that game. You talk about the Butler, the Butler thing, you know what I mean? I'm sure he was up for that part of it as well. The Kentucky relationship with Bam, like that, it was like a perfect storm, which gave him the 44, or made the 44 so great. But yeah, I think it's more to come. Like we said earlier, we haven't scratched the surface for him or the team.
Or this offense. The only reason for me, I feel like even prior to that game, not just the 8 shot game, up to that point, he was only averaging like 9.3 shots a game. I felt like he was an afterthought on the offense. But then after that game, I think they were like, okay, yeah, like, yeah,
To
yeah.
Jeff's point,
Hmm.
though, we lost that game by 6. You know what I mean? So you take the combination of you averaging nine shot attempts. We won a game, within that time frame. So when you win a game, there's no emphasis on, oh, I got to do more. I can't take 9 shots. But then you come off a game where you take 8, we lose by 6. Brunson don't play well. It's like I I think the loss is more eye opening to, like, dude, you give us 4 more shot attempts, you know what I mean? We win that game.
But I don't think it was just Cat not needing to
I,
take more shots. I think it was about the
I
the
agree with that too. I agree with that too.
the
But
team
him,
taking more shots and the offense, um, more things being run for him. I
I
just
agree.
felt, yeah, I just felt like after that game, well, not just after that game, after that 8-shot game, Tibbs went to the drawing board. Because there were some podcasters complaining, like, how you not even run any sets for this
Mhm.
guy? It to me, it just seemed like it was just uh whoever
You're right.
get it could shoot it. Like there was no pecking order. Like whoever get it can shoot it. And I'm not, I mean, that could be fine. But you want your best players, whoever your better players are, they should get the bulk of the shots, and everybody else should get shots off of them.
That's a
And I
great
think
point.
after that 8-game shot, Cat woke up, the rest of the team woke up, and Tibbs
And that's a
woke
great
up
point.
as well.
'Cause
Like we got to be more intentional about getting this guy some
Tibbs,
shots because of how good he is.
people were questioning Tibbs' ability to utilize a
Mm,
center of that caliber. So that's a great point. And this is like, I heard this from, like, people on Gil's
yeah,
Arena,
I
like
heard it.
ex players, you know what I mean, questioning his ability to coach and utilize a guy like Cat. So that's definitely a great point. And then for us podcasters, you know what I mean, the fan podcasters, we were debating whether it's whether it's Brunson's fault and he has to give more to Lady and the Chef's credit, or whether it was Cat having to go ahead and ask for the ball and demand it, and things of that nature. So and we saw more of that after that game as well, where in that 44-point performance, there was a couple times where Cat was asking for the ball, didn't get it, and you could see some emotion up, you know what I mean, after the fact. Like, not, nothing detrimental, but you want to see that. Ask for the ball, demand the ball. So yeah, it kind of went both ways, but that's a great point about the Tibbs aspect.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it offensively, I mean, you could talk more about Towns and what you've seen from him as you answer the question, because it's hard to talk about the offense and not talk about him, at this point. But what stood out for you offensively over these last 3 games compared to that first, 2 games when we were really trying to feel ourselves out? Where do you think the offense is now? And I just want to, I think, all right, just for a little context, for the season, we're third in offensive rating, 121.6. And last week, we were second over those 3 games at 120.4. Personally, I think this is something that's going to hold for the season. We're going to be in the top 5 offensively. And to Tony's point, we've yet to really get rolling offensively. Like we can see the potential in the offense, but it's not fully um there yet. Tony, we'll start with you. Offensively, what are you seeing? What do you like? What do you want to see more of?
You know, it's crazy. In that Cavs game, there was we had a 13-point lead in that game, right? Or a double digit lead
Yeah,
in that game.
13. I think it was it more than that? It was more than
It
13.
might have been more at some point, but I think, like, in the fourth or in the third, it was a 13-point lead. But I remember watching that Cleveland game, thinking at a certain point in the game, oh, this is the best we've looked. you know what I mean, collectively as a team. And then, as the game progressed, obviously we lost and got a little sloppy in the second half. But then you go to the next game, and the next game, I think we got better. We looked better collectively.
Mm-hmm.
All the last two games in particular. So and then if you talk about that last game, I think we had 30 assists. There was a point in the
On
first
40
quarter.
on 40 made, 40 field goal made, which was really good.
You know what I mean? Both great numbers. But there
Mhm,
was a point in that first quarter where out of our first, I'm gonna say seven possessions, all five starters scored and all five starters had an assist. You know what I
mhm,
mean? So it was so beautiful. I mean, I'm rewatching it right now, but it just reminded me of, 6 or 7 straight possessions where, it was constant sharing, revolving. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Mikal found Josh Hart. Um, um, Brunson got a lob to OG. Cat backdoor to Brunson. It was like pick your poison all around the floor. You know what I mean? So
mhm,
like
mhm, mhm,
great. I mean, granted, it's Detroit, but to your point, Queen, Detroit didn't play. They were playing teams tough. You know what I mean? Up until that game, like that was their worst game of the season. They were playing playoff teams and playing
mhm,
them down to the wire. So yes, it was Detroit, but that was the Knicks. You know what I mean? Like that was us finding our way more than Detroit being Detroit.
mhm. Yeah, for sure. Lady and the Chef, just your thoughts on our offense this past week, what you like and what you'd like to see going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's still too early, but I do see the potential. And that's the great thing about what I'm seeing from them offensively. I think, with the Cleveland game, it was a close game, but I think that that was somewhat of a wake up call for them, kind of like with the Boston game, where it was like, damn, we more so with Cleveland, they had that. I mean, you can't allow games like that to slip through your finger. And I think you got to make games like that a statement game where you're able to beat those teams that, in Cleveland's case, that are 7-0, and put a damper in their record. But I think with the Miami game and then with the Detroit game, the offense just seemed like it was clicking. The ball movement was there. And that was what really made the Knicks like widely successful last season was the unselfishness and the ball movement that they had and the way the Knicks were moving the ball. I think that's what helped contributed to having all five starters being able to get in double figures and, everyone averaging at least 2 steals. I think Deuce had 4. But that to me was very beautiful to watch. And that's what I want to see from the Knicks. And not to mention, all last season when we played Detroit, the games will always be to the wire, neck and neck. It was a game of trading baskets. And I remember before that game, I said, I really hope the Knicks don't allow that game against Detroit to be like, well, we score, they score, and it's a back and forth game. And then, maybe within the last 5 or 6 minutes, the Knicks will pull away from Detroit. But the way they handle business is what I'm expecting for them to do tonight and the remainder of this road trip of, that they're going to be on before they go back home on Friday. So I think with the offense, I want to see more of the two-man game come together, come alive between Brunson and Cat as now, unlike with Mitchell Robb, you have a guy who can not, he doesn't just need the lob. You can pass him the ball, whether it's a bounce pass, however you want to pass it. Also, another thing I noted with the offense that I'm noticing with the Knicks, guys are cutting to the basket. That was one of my pet peeves last season. I was like, when we did it, it worked. We used to pivot away from that. I'm like, why do the Knicks do that? They move away from something that's working. So this season, I'm seeing that a lot more. And I keep shouting him out because I know he's, I guess, out for tonight. But Cameron Payne does that well. When he's playing point, not only am I comfortable with him playing the backup point versus last year when we had to use in the past Deuce McBride, and it's no shade to Deuce, but Deuce, when he had to play point, it took away from him mentally how he had what he had to do scoring wise because he was so focused on I got to bring up the ball, facilitate the ball. I don't want to f up. I don't want to hear Tibbs spitting in my face in a timeout. I just don't. I want to get it right. But when Cam brings that ball up, he passes the ball and he moves. He doesn't just stand there. He's not doing this. He's not waiting for the ball back. I don't know, something about the way the Knicks are playing this season. Guys are moving and grooving, and as Clyde would say, and I like that. And I just want them to see see that consistently throughout this season, night in, night out.
No doubt. I think part of that, though, Lady in the Chef, is the cat factor. The fact that if you're the center, you have to respect him.
Right.
And not just respect him at the 3-point line, respect him a foot or two off the free throw line. And that's a lot of space. If you look when Cat is on the floor at the top of the key and you look in the middle, there's a lot of space in the middle for cutters because
Mm,
his guy can't stand in the key. His
right.
guy has to be with him. So it definitely has opened up those backdoor lanes and he can pass the ball.
Right.
and
He can take advantage of it.
and at 7 foot, you know,
He can
as
see.
good as
Great
as
point.
good as Randall was, he has more of a optimal advantage to see guys and pass out of the double team, especially when it comes to back doors cutting and things of that nature. Where Randall, you know what I mean, he's not as tall, so a double team really blocked his vision and blocked his ability to kind of still get. He could only do certain passes out of a double team. Where Cat at his size is like,
Right.
you know what I mean, that
Yeah,
backdoor cut he
some of them,
did to
some of them
Brunson.
are like behind. Right? I'm like, yeah,
That's due to his size and length. Pause.
yeah, yeah. Jeff.
Well, and I think too with Karl-Anthony Towns is he shoots the above the break threes, right? He can be outside the arc, up at the top, and that makes it especially difficult. It's one thing to close out, you know what I mean, from the corner, and then you can maybe hedge a little bit. But if you're talking about being, 24 feet away from the basket because you've got to deal with Towns,
Yep.
I mean, there's no recovery. There's no getting back into the paint that way, as opposed to if you're just talking about a big and there are, Brooke Lopez comes to mind, very efficient 3-point shooter, but a lot of it from the corners, it's a little bit different because it's not quite as long a shot. So it's not as much, you don't have to recover back as far. And I think what you're noticing though is what other teams are doing is like, well, we're going to put our big on Josh Hart and then we're going to, basically cover Towns with a little guy. And then it goes back to Tony's point, because then he's really got vision to make the pass for somebody who's cutting. And that's one thing that Josh Hart does very well is, look, I've got a big man on me. They can't stay with me. I'm just going to run him around the gym and then we're going to get open looks that way. And so I think it's a little bit of an evolution in these last few games as they learn each other and they get more comfortable with each other and they learn how defenses are trying to attack them, right? That goes both ways. The more tape you have on a guy, the more you know how to defend him, but the more you see how teams are defending you, the easier it is to attack because you can say, okay, the double's coming from this way. I know I can do this, this, and this. These are my actions. And really, what Thibodeau wants is he wants that action to be fast, whatever it is, get that ball moving. And when players are moving, when bodies are moving, it makes it impossible to defend. Like even like when the Knicks are playing the Celtics or the Pacers, like they're in rotation, they're getting an open three. Like that if you're in rotation, you're just dead in this modern NBA because they move the ball so quick and there's so many really good outside shooters nowadays.
Right.
It's really tough when you get caught in rotation and we can make teams rotate.
Yeah. And let me give Tibbs some credit for the offense. People say he's a defensive coach, and he's a dinosaur offensively, but the Knicks, have since he's been here, has been top 10 offensively. And what I like about Thibodeau is figuring out what a particular team needs, how they need to play to be successful offensively, right? The team we had before, we had to play the volume game to be successful offensively. Now it seems like we're going to have a different style of play, though we still need to get our volume up. We're really good 3-point efficiency, free throw efficiency, even overall field goal efficiency. And I ran these numbers before the Detroit game, we were like bottom 5 as far as attempts were concerned in those categories. So it doesn't make sense to shoot 90% from the free throw line and you only getting there 3 times. I mean, that's an over exaggeration, but if you're good in those areas, you want to get to the line so you can take advantage of your good free throw shooting. Put up enough 3-point attempts so you could take advantage of your efficiency. Now, for some teams and individual players, the more attempts you make, the worse your efficiency gets. But I don't think that's going to be the case with this team, with free throw attempts, with field goal attempts, and even with 3-point attempts. I just think that efficiency is here to stay. We just have to get our attempts up. Anything else offensively before we turn to the defense? Are we liking what we're seeing from Bridges? We haven't talked much about him, Bridges and OG. It doesn't matter whoever wants to chime
I
in.
think I think Bridges has been the most consistent. You know what I mean? You take away that first half against Boston, and he's been phenomenal. And I think OG's really been finding his way. You know what I mean? He was another guy we talked about shot attempts and whether they were going to stay in the low and or mid single digits, and those have risen as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you said defensively, I think those.
Offensively, before we get to the
Okay,
defense,
okay.
but
So yeah,
yeah,
I mean that's what I add about those two guys. I think Bridges has been the most consistent. You know what I mean? I love the fact that he's really utilizing that mid range. He's really utilizing that post up game when he has a smaller guy on him. Like these are advantages that are going to be there all year long. You know what I mean? All year long. So the more he gets accustomed to that, I think the more dangerous he becomes individually. We become as a team. It's
yeah,
another weapon.
yeah. I just, I know people who complain about his shot. It looks funky, but when it goes in, it's just so smooth. Like it just don't touch the rim, nothing. Sweat. Yeah, I love it. And what I also like is when they play a zone, if there's any room in the middle, he goes right to the middle, gets the pass, turn around for the for the mid-range jump. I really, really, really like his offense, his defense as well. But I love his offensive game. I really do. Anybody else want to comment on Bridges and OG?
I think with really quickly with Bridges is that I remember someone was in the chat saying there was this whole conversation about Debo, and I heard you, Steph. I think it was on one of your recaps at the afternoon recap,
Mhm.
and what you said was a really good point, and you were saying how Dante DiVincenzo is a good shooter, but Mikal Bridges is a really good player. And it's no shade or disrespect to Dante DiVincenzo, but I think, for those Knicks fans who do say they still miss Dante DiVincenzo, I think that they're missing exactly what you both were just reiterating what Bridges can do on the floor for the Knicks. A lot of that getting in the paint, Dante does that on a fast break. He had moments where he would explode to the basket, but not to the degree of what Mikal does on the floor. And the way he's so smooth and he's not afraid to play a little bully ball. And kind of like what Tony was saying with like Cat, how it's just effortless. He don't look like he's having a struggle. The most I see Mikal really having to work is when he's having to defend the top guy on the opposite team and he's really having to work defensively. He's fighting through screens. But offensively, I think we can all agree that we are expecting him to give us the scores, the scoring, but I think the way that he's able to score, he's not just so reliant on that three. He's able to give you the midi, he's able to drive. His game, there's that versatility under his belt where Dante DiVincenzo, who was streaky at times, again, he did a phenomenal job when he was on the Knicks, but it's not the same level when at times in games where sometimes you need someone outside of Cat and Brunson who's going to be able to step in and give you the points. He can do that.
Yeah, that fadeaway is sick too. Yeah, he got a bag too.
Yeah.
He definitely has a bag, and I don't think Bridges has scratched the surface.
Mhm.
Um,
I don't think he scratched the surface as well. Jeff, anything you want to add?
Just real quick, I agree with a lot of what Lady and Tony already said, so I'm not going to repeat that. But I think a little bit of the difference between Bridges and OG. Bridges, in my opinion, is a true 3-level scorer. Like, he can do all three things. I'm not sure that OG is a 3-level scorer as much as he is a very good finisher, and not just finisher at the rim, finisher on the wide open three in the corner. But as you said before, he's more of a finisher. Bridges is a scorer. He can do it on all 3 levels.
Yeah. And would you
Good point.
does that also include creating as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you see that when Bridges gets with that second unit, man. Yeah, there's more to come. Stay tuned. There's definitely more to come.
And he's
Let's
ready for it. He's ready for it every time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he got to warm up when he gets into that second. Oh nope, this is my turn. It's my turn.
right,
Like,
right.
he's ready to go immediately.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk defensively. For the season, we're 16th. But the last week we're 8th, 107.9. And remember that Boston game, other than this week, is just the 3 games we played, right? 107.9, eighth in the league. But the 16th, I'm pretty sure, I haven't done it, but I'm pretty sure if we take away the Boston game, we're even better. We're better than 16. But the defense seems to be coming along, at least statistically, right? We're top 10 at least last week we were top 10 um defense. What are we seeing on the floor? Jeff, we'll start with you defensively.
Uh, I think even in the Cleveland game was disappointing mostly for me because Cleveland shot 11 of 17 from the field in the fourth quarter, and
Yes.
we just had no answer for Darius Garland. I mean, he was just on fire, and I don't know if that's just a tip your cap kind of a moment, or if it's systemically something wrong with the defense, or what have you. We were standing defensively. I know it was the week prior, but in the Indiana game, I mean, they completely shut Halliburton out, and I don't even think the Pacers reached 100 points. So that's really doing something defensively. And then, I thought they did a good job against Miami, and they did a good job in the Detroit game for the most part. I mean, I think a lot of the Detroit game was our defense steals turning into offense. We had our hands in the passing lane. We had our hands on everything. I think Detroit thought that they were orange and blue instead of red and blue because they passed it to us more than we passed it to us at some points. But the defense is going to be a work in progress. We don't have a traditional rim protector. That's not Karl-Anthony Towns.
Correct.
I think it'll improve when Precious gets back. I may be in the minority. I'm not big on Huckporty or Sims. Either one. I don't think like Huckporty gets like one block and an assist, and he's like the rookie of the year candidate for some reason. I'm not real sure about that, but I'm not saying he's not going to be good. I think eventually, give him a couple years, I think he's going to be really good, but he's just not there right now. And I think when you get a player like Precious Achiuwa in the lineup, very switchable, plays really well with OG, all of these things, then I think you're going to see the defense uptick. And look, defense is team defense about playing on a string. That takes time. You don't get that after 4 games. You don't get that after 5 games. Sometimes you don't have that after 25 games. Right. What we've seen with this Knicks team is that in the second half of the season, if healthy, they're going to be really stout defensive because they have the wing players to cause a lot of different disruptions. And I think the more that Towns plays in Tibbs' system, better defender he's going to be. 5s under Tibbs just seem to do that. I think you saw that last year with Hartenstein. I think he got much better as the season rolled along. Credit to him, but I think some of that is coaching up, and so I think that, and eventually, hopefully, maybe Mitchell Robinson comes back too, and if you have him playing behind Cat and occasionally with him, that I think adds another dimension to this team as well. Because if you have a traditional rim protecting, shot blocking demon in there at the 5, in addition to those wings, you could really make life miserable on that end of the court. So there's even latent potential there too for down the line. You'll see some games where we struggle, but the modern NBA, these teams can really shoot. It's really tough to play stellar defense night in, night out. And I think it's still going to be a little bit rocky. I think in the weeks to come, the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to see some games where, like, where the defense at, man? What's wrong with these boys? I think we're gonna have some moments like that, and I think we're gonna have some moments where the offense, it's been a good week for the offense, but when you shoot 55% from the field and 44% from 3, everything looks great. When you shoot 44 and 33, like we did in the Cleveland game, what's wrong with the offense? Well, sometimes you just don't make shots, I guess. But I think you're gonna see us continue to struggle for a while. But I think once we get, if we can continue with continuity from the lineup standpoint, if we can get to 30 games or so with the same group, I think you're really gonna see the defense pick up. I don't know that we'll be a top 5 defense just because of the lack of rim protection, but I could definitely see us being top 10.
Yeah. Basically, Jeff, what you're saying is when we shoot well, don't, relax. And when we don't shoot well, relax. When we have a great defensive week, relax. And when we don't have a great defensive, relax. Like, that's just the NBA. Up and down. But Cody has a message for you, Jeff. He said, Jeff got that fiber optic connection. I see you, bro. Yes, he does.
I was thinking the same thing too.
Sounding crisp, Jeff. Yeah. Any Lady in the Shelf, what are you seeing defensively?
I mean, I kind of agree with Jeff. It's a little too early to tell right now. I mean, from what I'm seeing, it looks a lot better than what I saw in preseason. I'll tell you that much. The preseason was giving G League, Summer League vibes. I was like, what's going on here? Guys are just running up and down the floor. There was just straight up quick pace. I mean, like they had somewhere to be after the game. Yeah, I was like, why is everybody in such a rush? No one's stopping anyone. But I think so far the Knicks defense is it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. I'm not expecting, I don't have high expectations right now this soon into the season. I think this is a good opportunity for the Knicks to clamper down, especially with the in-season tournaments about to start, to really use that as a challenge to pick up the defense. Not necessarily, like, to me, I don't think the big feat should be on winning the in-season tournament. We care more about advancing and doing great and winning an actual championship. But to utilize like these these away games and solidify yourself as a good road team, and you can protect home court as well. Mm-hmm. But I wonder, like I heard Jeff mention Precious when he comes back, which he'll be very helpful and useful to this team. But I also wonder how things are going to play out defensively when you have Precious and Mitchell Robinson back in a lineup. And, at some points, does Tibb go and play all bigs, and put both of them in at some points, at certain times sporadically and at the same time, which I think could really work to our advantage, to have Mitchell Rob and Cat playing to be that full force, to have in a game. But I think that, like prime example against Detroit, Mikal Cunningham had Mikal running all around. And Mikal was doing everything in his power. He had blocks. He was able to, contend with him. It's not that Mikal could keep up defensively, but, there was times where Brunson was on him as well. And I know Cunningham spoke on that in the post game. And he said, he praised Brunson and said, yeah, his defense is really good. He said he was reading a lot of what I wanted to do. But I was watching Mikal and how he was playing Cade. And I was like, wow, man. Just the fact that the stamina was there, and he didn't look all winded, when he was walking to the bench a few times, but I like what I'm seeing defensively one on one, but there are some times where I'm looking at the Knicks defensively, and you know, I saw it in Miami. I saw it with Detroit. Teams are getting like easy baskets, and I'm just like, we got to tighten that up. And then I don't know if that's because we don't have enough defensive presence in the paint. You a lot of times you see, especially with rebounds, we know Josh and Cat's gonna give you the boards, but sometimes you need other guys. I feel like who needs to box out. You know what I mean? You need to box out so this way you can contain whoever's trying to get the board, and at least so this way you can try to get the rebound as well. But I don't know. I just think defensively it's a work in progress. I think I would love to revisit and talk about this after 2025 games, maybe 35 games, to see
Yeah,
like
we're gonna
how
talk
good
about it
do
every
they
week.
right, right, right.
Yeah. I will also say, to add to your point, let's not when you talk about Mikal Bridges running around, after Kate Cunningham, let's not underestimate how much that takes out from a player energetically, and then we're still expecting them to produce and shoot efficiently on the offensive end, right? OG and Mikal Bridges is playing the point guard. He's playing the point of attack every night. That's a big assignment. That's a lot of running around. The same with OG as well. And then we're expecting them to score for us and be efficient at it as well. It is a big ask. And I think Towns has to be better defensively as well. But we also can't underestimate his offensive load also. And to both you and Jeff point, if Mitchell Robinson can stay healthy, to me, he's perfect. He is perfect for how I would play him. I would play him behind Towns, and at times with him. Did I times Towns?
At
Like
times with Towns.
at times with him. Like for me, I wouldn't start them. I
Yeah.
wouldn't play them a lot of minutes together, but that versatility that you got a rim protector when Towns goes to the bench, and depending on the matchups, you can play them together. Like that versatility, I would love that. It's just a matter of whether or not Mitchell Robinson can stay healthy, and it's also a matter of whether or not the Knicks front office trusts that he can stay healthy. Because if they're not trusting that, they may look to move him before we even get a chance to see how how it would look. Tony, your thoughts on the Knicks defense this past week, and overall, if you want to comment on that.
Overall, I think, to be honest, I think the defense has been. Pardon me, my cat wallet. I think the defense has been great. You take away that Boston game, and I think we're in the middle of the top 10. So that being said, plus you taking the fact, like, we're not going to see our true defense until, like you said, Mitchell Robinson returns. That's next year. But when Precious comes back, that's going to improve our defense as
No
well.
doubt.
You know what I mean? He's another guy that you could play alongside with Cat. Another guy that you could now push everybody down a spot. You know what I mean? So you could have Precious out there with OG, with Bridges, you know what I mean, and Towns, and that is going to be a great defensive lineup. Or with Towns out, OG and Precious together, those numbers are proof in what they're capable of. So I think I'm not worried about the defense. I think it's improved as these games have gone on, and I think it's Tibbs. I think by the end of the season, by the middle of the season, like, it's going to continue to get better and better.
Mhm.
I would not be surprised if we're top 5 in offense and defense by end of the year for sure.
Wow. Wow. Anthony D, my guy. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. Appreciate you. Um, what I like about Precious and Towns is Precious can play the center defensively. And as much as one of the reasons I like Towns at the 5 is because depending on who that other player is, if that player is not limited offensively, then it doesn't matter. Like if that player can pass, shoot, and drive, then whether you play cat at the 5 or at the 4, to me, whatever. But if that player can't do that, then I think it does make our offense less free flowing. Um, Precious and Towns together, yeah. I mean, I'm okay with that. All right, the Knicks have a game tonight. We play the Houston Rockets at 8:45. You know, our regular starters: Brunson, Bridges, Hart, OG Ananobi, Karl-Anthony Towns. For Houston, this is who started for them their last game: Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Sengun. Um, let's just talk about what you want to see from the Knicks. What's your keys to the game? And then the next thing we'll talk about is matchups. Um, you know what? Let's reverse it. Let me go back here. Um, any matchup um you're interested in, Lady in the Chef?
Um, I feel like, well, one player I think they definitely need to watch out for is that cocky Dylan Brooks. Gotta watch out for him. He got that Miami Heat syndrome. He be looking to hurt guys, so we gotta watch out for that one. But I would say probably Brunson and Van Vliet, just because
Mhm.
he likes to shoot lights out. He's good on the drive. He's quick. He could create the spacing. So I'm definitely going to be looking out for that matchup. And then going back to what we was talking about at the top of the show, Jeff brought up with Spider and Brunson kind of going back and forth. I don't know if maybe that may happen tonight. Jalen Brunson likes to have the last word and tell the crowd to get that guy out of here. So I'm looking out for that matchup, Brunson and Fred VanVleet.
All right, Jeff. I mean Tony. We haven't heard from Tony. Oh, Jeff. Jeff.
Well, Freddie Van Vliet's been like Freddie Krueger to Jalen Brunson over the years. He gives him nightmares. Like, if you look it up, I mean, Van Vliet almost always really bothers Brunson. I don't know. I don't know if it's because he's a carbon copy. I don't know if it's kryptonite or whatever, but I don't, that this is not the best matchup for Brunson. So what I'm kind of looking for is for Bridges and maybe Towns to kind of carry the load a little bit more and on offense and help pick it up, because historically that doesn't mean it's going to happen tonight. Historically, FVV has been a big problem for JB.
Yeah, for sure. The matchup for me, let me see if I have it here, is Karl-Anthony Towns and Sengun. Um, and I think they'll be matched up. I think they'll be matched up again. I don't know. Maybe they'll be matched up against each other. Maybe Tibbs will put Karl-Anthony on Jabari Smith and put Josh Hart on
OG.
OG, right? OG, you're right. Put OG on Sengun. But yeah, even if they don't match up, it's like quarterbacks. Even though they playing against the other team, another defender, and they not playing each other directly. I'm really interested to see what Karl-Anthony does against his matchup, whoever he's matched up against, and how we defend Sengun, who is, when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, any way you want it: scoring, rebounding, passing. Similar skill set to Karl-Anthony's. I don't know if he's. I don't. Is he a good 3-point shooter?
He can shoot it. I don't think he's has the volume or the percentage, but he's more than capable. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
like if we didn't have Cat and we had Sengun, I would consider him big that can stretch the floor. You know what I
Okay.
mean? But he's not going to shoot it 40, let alone 60% from three.
Right, right. I mean, if Karl-Anthony Towns, if Jabari Smith, who has some, who's longer than Sagoon, I think, or he might even look longer because because he's so
Skinnier.
thin.
Hmm.
Um, Karl-Anthony Towns should have his way, and like we talked about earlier, Towns has been superb in his recognition. You know, when to drive, when to hit the three, when to, when to post, when to pass, reading the defense. One of the mm, complaints from Minnesota fans was that his IQ was, let's just say, inconsistent. you know, and that he would make some low IQ decisions in big moments. But his IQ up to this point in the season, anyway, has been on point. As far as I can see. Not that the Knicks have been in big moments, but this is a matchup I'm interested in seeing. Tony, any matchup you're interested in seeing tonight?
Couple things I want to say. The Brunson Fred Van Vliet thing.
Hmm.
I'm not concerned about that. I think Fred was playing very well against Brunson when he was in that contract year. When Brunson was freshly on the Knicks and had a huge contract, relatively, you know what I mean? We all know that was a steal in hindsight. But I think that was him saying, "Oh, another short guy." You know what I mean? I'm just as good as him. I'm more proven than him throughout careers. So I think that's that. In Houston, I don't think Fred has played. Or I'll say I think Brunson has outplayed Fred since he's been in Houston. Um, I agree with you as far as the matchup to watch. Karl-Anthony Towns, Sangoon savvy scorer. You know what I mean? That might not be Cat's strong point, even though I think he's played defense well this year. But on the flip side, Sangoon is not a defender at all. So I think
Right.
at worst, you know what I mean, they should even out. But I'm gonna give Cat the advantage just because of the experience. You know what I mean? And we have enough help guys around him that it doesn't have to be Cat, like you said. It could be OG. You know what I mean? If things don't look well with Cat on him, you know what I mean? It could be a plethora of different guys. I don't think they have that luxury or answer for Cat at all. But my biggest thing is who has the breakout game. You know what I mean? Can OG have a breakout offensive game? You know what I mean? You got Brooks, who I think, you know what I mean, they're gonna he can't guard everybody, right? So whether you want to put him on Brunson, you want to put him on Bridges, I think
Right.
ultimately it's gonna open the door for like OG to kind of really have a game where, all right, who you're putting on me. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
All right. Um, any keys to the game tonight?
Yeah, the Knicks got to step up defensively because Houston's last couple of games that they played, the games have been close.
Mm-hmm.
They've been very close. And, they lost that last chipper against the Warriors and they were up and they allowed them to come back in that game. But I was checking out the scores. I'm like, these guys are not getting blown out. They're losing by 2 points, 5, 6 points. So, and even if they won, so I think the Knicks need to really try to capitalize and try to, really hold them defensively so they're not scoring in the high 100s. You got to try to lock them in at 90, 90, 95 points if you can, and then
Ooh.
break away from there. But
Hmm.
I want to see the Knicks really be able to lock in one-on-one defensively, playing man-to-man defense and, box out. Those guys are tall, they're physical. And, let's all pray that everyone's careful with Dylan Brooks because he's like a Bam. He's like a he also reminds me of a Draymond. You gotta watch out for that guy. It's unfortunate, but it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it's true. Like you players like him, he do things that's somewhat intentional. He may say it's unintentional, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm praying that we get through this game, with a win, but everybody with bones and ligaments still attached.
Yeah. And also with Dylan, he may try to intimidate as well. Ain't no
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
soft players on the Knicks anyway, but that's his thing too, to get, be real physical, get up underneath your skin, try to take you out of your game
Right.
mentally. Tony, keys to the game, then Jeff.
I want to double down and add to Lady and the Chef. Um, what they play 6 games so far,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
3 and 3.
5 games. 6 games. Um, every single game they've either had a double digit lead, lost it, or were down double digits and came back. Every single one, whether it was 20 points, 13 points, 15 points, every single one. They haven't lost the game by more than 6 points. So those that right there tells you they're not gonna quit. You know what I
Right.
mean? They're not gonna give up. You get off to an early start, you got to keep your foot on the gas. You know what I mean? Very similar to the Detroit team that we just played, who were very, very whatever the record is, it is, but they didn't lose games by like more than 8 points. So that all being said, yeah, keep your foot on the gas. Get ahead early if possible. I always like that rather than having to fight back. They will let you back in the game if they're up, but
Mhm.
it's really about taking that commanding lead, but not letting your foot off the gas with this team, because they're not going to stop fighting until the final buzzer. That what I mean. They kind of remind me of us a couple years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're a little bit more, obviously more talented than Detroit, a little bit more experienced than Detroit. So and even collectively as like the units, they've been together for a couple years now as well. Where Detroit, they brought in some new pieces. So that what I mean, it's gonna take them a little bit longer. This team is, what I mean, a threat still. Like don't take the record lightly. You know what I mean? They're playing against high caliber teams out west as well. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of my same key. You know what I mean? Like stay focused, don't take them lightly, keep your foot on the gas because they're not gonna quit.
Yeah. Salute to Legion and Knicks and everybody else in the chat. Appreciate you rocking with us. And to Tony's point, they were in the play-in race pretty far into the into the season. So they played together a couple of seasons, and all the talk in the preseason for them was, how do we actually make the play-in? How do we take that next step? We was almost, I think they got some injuries late that may have had a lot to do with them actually not getting in the play-in. They played well last year. Jeff, any keys to the game?
I think we need to keep Karl-Anthony Towns out of foul trouble. That's why
Yeah.
I'd really like to see OG Anunoby guarding Sengun if possible. Um, I kind of agree with Tony. Remember last year we went down to Houston and we played with our food, and then we had that awful foul call against Brunson at the end, end up losing the game. And so that's the memory that sticks out to me. So
Yeah.
it's the third game of a road trip that, let's stay focused, go out and play well. Um, I'd like to see a little bit more from the bench. I mean, I almost consider Deuce like a six starter.
Mhm.
So, and I know Cam Payne's going to be out
No,
likely
right.
tonight. So you may
Right.
have to see Tyler Kolek come in and give us a few solid minutes of point guard play. So I'm kind of looking at that and see how we navigate those minutes where Brunson is not on the floor. I think that may be a real key to this game as well. Or does Brunson just play like 44 minutes tonight because of injuries? We know Tibbs has done that in the past as well, but I'm curious about that.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think Kolek plays. I mean, I don't think you could go 7. I mean, we damn near going 7 anyway, because whoever that eighth person is playing what, 10 minutes or what have you. Um, so hopefully, we just put Kolek in that in that position. We usually run Bridges and OG and Anobi with that second unit. So if there's any concerns about his defense, those are two really good players to have on the court with him. McBride is a good defender. Sims, can hold his own as well, or Hawkporty, whoever Tibbs chooses to go with, um, tonight. Unless you move Deuce to the 1, and then that opens up, maybe a Daddy A to come in at the 3. I'm not a fan of Huck Porty and Sims together.
No.
Um, just redundancy for nothing. I don't know how much more we're getting out of that. So if he's gonna move McBride to one, then I would like to see Daddy A. And
Queen,
if
I was
Matt
gonna say
Ryan plays tonight, you know how Tibbs feel about him.
I was
Remember when Josh Hart came right from the airport and played 30 minutes? If Matt Ryan gets into the game tonight, we know how Tibbs feel about it. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just gonna say, as much as I like Kolek, want him to get some spots, get some spot minutes or minutes. I don't care who it is, you know what I mean. So like you're saying, whether it's Deuce at the one, you might see McCall come in that second unit and run the offense anyway. You know what I mean. So that might open the door for Dadier as well. You know what I mean. And I agree 100%. Sims Huck Porty together, may maybe not. But you might see them both play, just not together. You know what I mean? We've seen that one game as well, where they both split like 7 minutes or whatever the case was. So I think that there's a bunch of different ways we could go. Yeah. So again, it's not on Kolek for sure, but somebody needs to be brought in and step into a rotation spot tonight if Cam is not there.
I think somebody said he was out. If Can somebody in the chat confirm that? Um, this is how things are stacking up in the Eastern Conference as of today, 1 through 10. Knicks are third at 3-2, but you could tell from 3 to 8, 3-2, two, 3-4, really, really bunched up. It's super early right now, but look at Cleveland, 7-0, Boston, 6-1. The Knicks get this one tonight, could be 4-2. You know, um,
I still see game time decision.
Game time decision. Okay, all right. Let's just briefly. This is our games. I say next week, but this is actually this week's games. The Rockets tonight, Wednesday. We play Atlanta. Both of these are on the road. Against the Rockets, against Atlanta on the road, and then we're home Friday for the Milwaukee Bucks, and then Sunday we're home too.
No,
I
I
think
think we're
Sunday
back on the
I
road.
think we're at Indiana.
we're
Yeah.
at Indiana. Okay, well
Mhm.
Sunday we're back on the road, um, at Indiana. The Rockets are 11th in offensive and defensive rating. Again, it's early in the season. Atlanta is ninth in offense, 28th in defense. Milwaukee 21st in offense, 23rd in defense. They almost had that game against Cleveland and lost by one.
Bucks
Hopefully they get a win before we play them. And then Indiana had another injury. Wiseman went down with an Achilles injury. He wasn't playing that much. But Isaiah Jackson, who was in their rotation, if I'm not mistaken, also went down with an Achilles injury. But they're 18th in offensive rating, 25th in defensive rating, and the Knicks are third in offense, 16th in defense overall, eighth the past week. What's your predictions for this 4-game week, Tony?
I ain't going undefeated no more until they prove that they could go undefeated. So, and I feel like you know, forget what the rankings are. Forget what this the record is. I think all these games have the potential to be tough. I have
Absolutely.
I haven't watched much of the Hawks, but I do know Trey Young is having one of his better years to start the year, and that's always dangerous. Like you said, hope the Bucks get a win before we face them. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna be dangerous whether they got to win or if they still trying to get a win
Right.
because they gonna you know what I mean they're gonna be fighting, and then obviously the Pacers are gonna be due to revenge. They're probably
Mhm,
honestly the least I'm concerned about as
mhm.
far as the four teams. I'm gonna say 3-1. I'm gonna say 3-1 with one of the losses coming between the Bucks and the Hawks.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Lady in the Shop.
Yeah, same for me. I got them 3-1. Not sure where that one loss comes from on my end because this is a interesting next group of games for this week. But yeah, I'm not as optimistic as Diva Locks when she literally predicted 4-0. But yeah, I got them 3-1, and I'm also going to be paying attention to this season how the Knicks rebound from a loss. So if they lose a game, are we able to win the next two or three, versus losing one and then or winning one and then we lose the next two. So I want to see how the Knicks rebound from games that they lose, whether it's at home or on the road. So that's something else I'm gonna be paying attention to.
Yeah. Jeff.
Well, Milwaukee's going to give us their best punch, whether they're struggling or not. It's funny that you showed that top 10 list, and the Bucks and the Sixers, neither one of them were on it,
Yeah.
which is crazy to me. I'd really like to see us start to stack some wins. Like
Yeah.
I really feel like it's important to go 3-1 at a minimum in this next stretch, just because I think you can put some, especially if you can beat Milwaukee and kind of as a statement and kind of bury them when they're down, and stack some wins and get to the top of. I mean, 3-2 is the third best record in the Eastern Conference right now. If you can get to 6-3, you're going to start to put some distance between two, because a lot of those 2 and 3 teams, 3 and 4 teams that are below us are like the Nets and the and the Washington, I think, is in that group.
Yes.
Could they be good? Yes, but I don't necessarily have a lot of faith that those are, long-term sustainable situations. So especially with as tough a schedule as we saw these first 20 games was going to be, or thought it was going to be, I'd really like to see us stack some wins and get to 3-1 this week. I think it would be a really good sign for where we can. Not that we would push the panic button if we're 2-2 or anything, but if we can get to 3-1, I think, and get above 500 by a few games and kind of, keep this road winning streak going. I'd like to see that.
Yeah. I agree. I have us 3-1 too. I think the Indiana game is going to be the hard one to get, even though they're struggling right now. I mean, we really whipped up on them when we played them at the Garden. So we're going to have their attention, and they're going to be at home, and they're struggling, and we held Halliburton scoreless
Scoreless, yeah.
in that game. So he's going to bed early the night the night before, so he could be uh, he could be ready. And I agree. I think Milwaukee is going to be a tough game, whether they're struggling coming into that game or not. You know,
Yeah. Some
significant injuries. Go ahead, Tom.
No, somebody in the chat said we're not losing to Atlanta, and let me just preference the only reason why I'm putting them in that category is because the games we've lost, I think 3-point shooting had a tremendous part to do with it. You know what I mean? And they're probably the best 3-point shooting team out of these 4 games. You know what I mean? So if it's one of those situations where they're just on from 3 and we aren't, you know what I mean, or our attempts aren't at a high enough clip, you know what I mean, that could be a recipe for disaster.
But
Yeah,
Atlanta's kind of like a home game for us, though, too. We packed that gym pretty well.
yeah, yeah. They're not playing though. So we'll see.
You were
Um,
gonna say something about injuries. I know
yeah,
your conditioning.
yeah. I know. Bankero is out for I think 4 to 6 weeks, if not longer. I forgot the injury he had, so it's an opportunity for the Knicks.
Abdominal strain, the same thing Josh Hart dealt with in that playoff.
Okay, so to gain some separation, I do think this Eastern Conference. Well, when you're looking at Milwaukee, who's not playing well, and Philly dealing with a lot of injuries, maybe it won't be as tight as I thought it was going to be coming into the season. But I'd still like to see the Knicks get some separation while Milwaukee is struggling, get some separation while Embiid is out. I think Paul George was questionable, so he may play tonight, but still,
He's back tonight.
he's back tonight. Get some separation on Orlando. Indiana is struggling, so there's an opportunity if we can get right and get consistent and win some games over this next, I don't know, month or so, we can get some separation, and these guys have to play. These other teams would have to play catch up. Any last words? Oh, let me just give a shout out to the panel. Give a shout out to the panel. Tony Crow from Knicks and Bruises. In the description is the links to the show. He goes on Monday at 1:00. We were on today in his channel, Fire Show. Then he also goes on Wednesday night, the exact time to be determined. So please subscribe to his channel, hit that notification button so you'll know when he does go live. Two Knicks chicks, Lady and the Chef, Diva Locks, 21. They go on Thursdays at 7 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. Again, the link to their show is in the chat. Anything you want to add, Lady and the Chef?
No, yeah, check us out on Thursdays and then Sundays. And I'm trying to schedule getting Ebony and BX Chris on a show.
Nice.
I want to wrap up the WNBA season and give our grades for the New York Liberty and expectations for next year and see if we could run it back.
Nice. So be sure, again, the link is in the show description. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel and to stop by and give a like. And if you're part of the replay gang, drop a comment. That definitely helps the show as well. And Jeff has a daily sports blog, Happily Ever Clafter. That link is also in the description. Jeff, I read your latest article this morning. Great, where I love the way you write. Just a great great article. He's also a panelist on the Just Nicking It Weekly show on Thursday, so you can check him out there. And then, obviously, Dope Soul Sports Talk. I'm the creator of that channel. We have a weekly show on Thursdays. The Cutting Room Floor podcast went from Sunday noonish to Sunday-ish to someday-ish. At some point, I'm gonna get to it. I'm out of the country this weekend, so I don't even know if I'll be able to catch the Knicks game Friday and Sunday. I'll be on a cruise. I hope I can. But tomorrow around lunchtime, I'll be there for the game recap. So subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button. I'll also do one Thursday after the Wednesday game, but I won't do one Sunday, and I probably won't be back in time to do one Monday, but I'll be back in time for the Queen's Court. We may not have all the slides though, because I'll just be getting in from the airport, but I'll be back for the Queen's Court. Thanks for watching. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Obviously, I'm not able to shout, everybody out, but I definitely appreciate you guys rocking with us. Those who, are listening and not commenting in the chat, we appreciate you. And if there's any replay gang, later on, appreciate you, you guys as well. And shout out to Simeon Russell, the creator of the channel, for just recognizing talent and asking me. No, I'm kidding. For giving me an opportunity to do the Queen's Court. I don't know how many years it's been now. 3, maybe 4. Maybe 4 years now. So definitely, appreciate him. I'm not sure if he'll be on for post game. His schedule is kind of hectic, but you guys are subscribed to the channel. I'm pretty sure you have the notification button on. So if he goes live after the show, you'll hear about it. If Tony goes live with the Losers Lounge, and there should be one tonight, right? Because the Knicks are gonna take care of business, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they have that notification on, and tomorrow is election day. So whoever you vote for, that's who you vote for. But get out there and vote. I'm like an old lady. I got the mail-in ballot today, so I don't have to go to the polls. And I dropped it in the mail. I said, "Look at me. This is what old people do." But I'm happy I don't have to go to the polls. I got to be honest. But anyway, until next time, family. Appreciate it.